We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we live, work and create this podcast. I'm on Darug and Gundungurra land. Holly is on Ngunnawal land. Lex is on Gubbi Gubbi, Jinniburra and Turrbal land. And all of our listeners in so-called Australia are also on unceded First Nations land. It always was and it always will be. Welcome to Somebody You Love. Or The Sale of Two Titties. I'm Jenna Love.
And I'm Holly Hart.
And we're experts in disappointing our parents, breaching community guidelines, and banging the people who vote against our rights.
While the three voices you'll hear in this episode all belong to people who have lived experience working in the sex industry at different sizes, including plus size, we are not able to speak on behalf of the whole industry, and we encourage you to make sure you're actively listening to all sex workers, not just those of us with the privilege of being white and cisgendered.
So I've got a content warning for you. You've probably already figured out from the title of the episode that we are going to be talking about weight. We're going to talk about weight loss, changes in appearance generally. We're going to touch on cosmetic and surgical procedures. These are all pretty sensitive subjects that are quite loaded and a lot of people have a connection to in some way. But we want to be able to speak quite openly and frankly about them. So if any of that's, maybe your brain's not in the best space for it today, maybe give this one a miss for now.
Lex is a full-service sex worker and online content creator that has been involved in the industry for 13 years and is based in Brisbane. Over the last few years, she has lost a total of 50 kilos, has had a number of cosmetic procedures, including a tummy tuck and a breast lift, and her experiences in the industry have changed, along with her weight and appearance. She describes herself as a nerdy gamer girl who loves fantasy and pop culture and has an unhealthy obsession with Lord of the Rings. Hey, Lex.
Hello, Lex. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm very honoured to be here as a guest this week.
Oh, lovely. It's our absolute pleasure. It's as I said, we're going to talk about some tricky topics and we're really grateful that you're prepared to talk about them.
I'm super excited but also very nervous knowing that this can be a sensitive topic for a lot of people.
Yeah. It's a tough one, but we don't like to shy away from the tough ones.
No, definitely not. The tough stuff needs to be said.
100%. So let's start up with your origin story. How did you get into the industry? Tell us a bit about your experience in the industry.
So it's probably a little taboo because I was actually underage when I first sort of started dipping my toes into the industry. And you know how everyone's always like, oh, that's not really what you want to grow up, like you don't grow up dreaming of doing this. I actually kind of did. It's always been something that I have had a very keen interest in the adult industry. And so when I was 16/17, I made a profile on a website years ago and I started posting risque photos. They weren't fully nude because obviously I did know that I was underage and I didn't want to push too many boundaries apart from the ones I was already doing. But yeah, I did that for a couple of years until I actually turned 18 and then started doing nude photo shoots. I started posting a little bit more risque stuff. It was right around the time that Snapchat sort of just launched. So I was charging people money to access my Snapchat, and that was where I was selling a lot of my content because there wasn't really a platform that I knew about at that time to be able to do that. So it sort of started there. I did photo shoots and stuff here and there. I did a little bit of Suicide Girl modelling, which I still am a part of the website 10 years later. Then I've done some webcamming. I'm also a photographer in and out of the industry. Photography has always been a passion of mine. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of about 5 or 6 years ago now is when I started doing full service. I was married at the time and it was something that we had spoken about in very great detail. Wanted to make sure that we were both comfortable, and he was very supportive, and so I went for it. As my confidence in my body and my sexuality grew from the time I was 16, 18, it kind of was just like a little bit of a ball rolling. One thing led to another and to the next and to the next. And now I kind of balls to the wall, I do everything. So yeah.
Great expression.
Right? I jumped all in, I guess. So it was a gradual progression until it got to the point where I was comfortable enough to just be like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to do everything. Because at that point, I think I was around like 25, 26 when I started doing full service, and I had already been outed for the stuff that I'd been posting online. So at that point, I'm like, I really don't have anything else to lose. I'm already being called all of these names and have all this stigma.
Can I ask, like, how you got outed, or like who outed you and to whom? Like, what was that?
So, when I was 18, I was dating a guy who was much older than myself. There was 23-year age gap.
Wow. Okay.
Looking back now, I realise how troublesome that was.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, 18, no one could tell me what to do. If anything, I was just kind of like, yeah, well, fuck you. I don't give a shit what you think sort of attitude, which very much shows my immaturity. But we were together for 2.5 years and broke up just before my 21st birthday. During this time, I was still sort of posting my nudes to Tumblr before that all got shut down. And after our breakup, which was very messy and bad because he was super controlling and manipulative and emotionally abusive, like a lot of stuff was wrong with that relationship. He went to work one day and I packed up my stuff, got on a plane and flew to Queensland.
Good on you.
And he didn't know until he got home from work that night, and I was gone, and so was all my stuff. And so he then proceeded to continuously stalk me, and it only stopped about 3 years ago. And he emailed my dad photos of me about a week after I'd landed in Queensland. And so I got a phone call from my dad one day, and my dad went off at me about, what the fuck have you been doing, posting all of these things online? Like, how dare you? And I had basically just said to him, like, Dad, I'm 21. I can make my own choices. He ended up hanging up on me because I was like, who sent you this email?
Yeah.
He was like, it doesn't matter who. And I'm like, well, it really does.
Very much
really
does.
does.
It really does.
Yes.
And I knew who it was because he also worked in IT.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and so about a week later, my dad called me back and apologised, which I didn't realise at the time of just how significant that was, because a lot of people don't even get that. And so I was very grateful that his wife probably talked a little bit of sense into him and explained that she's an adult. But yeah, so I have always had a relatively close relationship with my mum. And so she kind of knew little bits here and there about the stuff that I was doing. I guess she just didn't know the entire story or how deep into it I was. And so when I got that phone call from my dad, I immediately called my mum and I was just like, oh my God, Mum, what do I do? She's like, why? What's happened? What's going on? And so I told my mum everything. She was like, right, I thought there was something along those lines, but I didn't realise that it was a regular thing. I was like, yeah, well, I make money off this. That's enough to entice me to keep going.
It's just so upsetting that, I mean, it's such a common experience that you had an act of violence perpetrated against you.
Absolutely.
And the reaction from your father, initially at least, was to give you crap about it when you were a victim in that situation.
That had caused me
Yeah,
wow. I'm sure over your entire career there have been all sorts of changes in appearance, but particularly in the last few years you have had a significant change. Can you talk us through the physical changes that you've experienced?
Yeah, so in 2020 in March, I flew overseas to Thailand and I had weight loss surgery, specifically the gastric sleeve. And for those who don't know what that is, it's a keyhole surgery, which is a form of bariatric surgery to remove 70% of your stomach. And they sew you back up. So essentially your stomach is no longer a pouch. It is now a tube. And so by doing that, you consume less food and it fills you up faster, meaning that you eat less and lose weight. So I had that done in March 2020, and over the next 6 to 8 months, I lost a total of 50 kilos or 99 pounds, which physically, my body recovered quite quickly. Mentally, I still haven't. Mental side of that journey is an entire other, it's in a league of its own. So there's been a big fluctuation in my appearance, and then also in turn a big change onto how I am perceived as a person.
Yeah, so I think like those of us in this industry, we often worry about what happens when we move into a different quote unquote category. Like we get a bit older, so suddenly we're not a teen anymore, we're a MILF, because they're the two options, of course.
Yeah.
We go from being slim to putting on weight, and then all of a sudden that means we're a BBW, because again, they're the two options. We might go from not having tattoos to being heavily tattooed and being pierced. Even changing hair color can be wrought with stress for sex workers. Holly has recently experienced how some people cope when you suddenly change your hair color.
Crisis.
So how, Lex, have you found that the reaction has been in terms of clients and fans? Have you been able to maintain regulars, or has your audience shifted?
So I would say that I've probably maintained about maybe 5 to 10 regulars throughout that change. I don't know whether that would be a high or low number, but I have had bookings with people who have found those ads that have been fake photos, like they're photos and stuff that I've not posted, and they've turned up to the bookings recently and been like, oh, wow. Oh, you're not fat. No, where did you find my ad?
Yeah.
And then they proceed to name a website that I've never even heard of. And I'm like, I apologize, but I've lost weight. Yeah. And they're disappointed. I mean, they've still gone through with the booking, but they've turned up not expecting what I look like now. So I definitely have noticed a shift in clients, but I feel like I've definitely not lost. Like I haven't noticed a significant drop, because I've always been confident regardless of my appearance. Just like a confident person in the way that I hold myself regardless of how self-conscious I'm feeling. But in saying that, it's sort of led me to feel a little bit of resentment about the way that I'm treated as a smaller bodied person. Not only have I noticed the change in attitude towards me from people who knew me before I lost weight, it's been kind of like they've expected my personality to become superficial.
Oh, wow.
And I've had a lot of people make specific comments along those lines, and I've had to address it a few times.
Can you elaborate a bit? Like, can you explain? Because I just can't.
So when I first started losing weight, I probably got to like maybe the 20, 30 kilo mark, and it was obvious that I had dropped weight. I had a bunch of my followers on Instagram and Twitter message me asking if I was going to up my prices because I was more attractive.
Wow.
Or
thanks, guys. Yeah.
I
know. So again, like I said, that kind of resentment towards people about their fat phobia pushed onto me. But then there was also other things about I've always been a sort of person that doesn't like to speak about before and afters, or I don't post public comparisons to imply and feed into the rhetoric that this is a better photo than this one over here, because there's a body change. I've never liked doing that. And so on my private accounts and social media, I have posted it as a form of tracking and for the people that were interested in following that journey. And I've had people come to me and be like, you look so happy now.
Oh, God. Sorry.
Implying.
Just projecting.
Projecting. Yeah. Implying that I was extremely unhappy before just because maybe one photo was me standing there taking a selfie, like straight-faced, and the next photo is someone that's taken a picture of me where I'm smiling. And so, of
there
course,
are so
that means,
many factors that go
of course,
into
that means that I'm happy about being a smaller person, not happy about whatever is happening in that moment.
Wow.
And so, like, that is one thing that I absolutely hate. Just that whole storyline of you're smaller, so you have to be happier. You look skinny, so you must be healthier. That whole can of worms there. And so there's been other times, where people have asked me, oh, well, so do you not hang out with this person anymore? Maybe you don't want to hang out with me because I'm not the type of person that you like anymore.
Oh, no.
Oh, that's so sad.
So, I mean, obviously that's their own projection, their own insecurities, but also it's kind of insulting that they assumed that because my physical appearance has changed, that the person that I am also changed along with that.
And also that the person you were before only wanted to hang out with certain people because...
Yeah, like I wanted to surround myself with people of similar appearances to me so that I felt better about myself. Like that's kind of where it feeds into, and the implication that I was superficial.
Yeah,
and that's not me at all. Like I understand how potentially it can be perceived that way because the stereotype is that attractive people are shallow and rude and mean. Like obviously society as a whole definitely feeds into that stereotype, but when you realize that your friends think those things about you, well, people who you thought were your friends, that's hurtful, and that then goes into how bad your mental health gets. All of those things, not only are you suffering from your own physical appearance changing, then hearing all of these things of what other people think of you on top of that, it just creates this giant like fog in your head. Like, I don't know what's going on, what's real, what do people think of me? It's a fucking anxiety attack in its own.
It sounds like a minefield.
Yeah.
What about the reaction of your peers? Have you noticed a shift in their attitudes or the attitudes of the community as a whole?
Yeah, definitely. So like you said earlier, I've been in the industry for quite a long time. I definitely wouldn't say like that I'm a household name that people know just, oh, that's Lex. Yeah, I know who she is. But I definitely don't think that I'm someone that people have never heard of. But it has been so much more apparent to me how more included that I am in peer spaces in a smaller body, how much more likely people are to reach out to me to be a part of social events, to be a part of collaborations, and I fit their aesthetic now. That they are more likely to want to work with me and have me join things. Whereas before, and again, it might not specifically be because of my physical appearance changing, but when I'm suddenly being reached out to by people who knew me before, peers and clients alike, it's definitely like you can't sort of shake that in the back of your head being like, is this the reason?
Yeah, you're right. There's always that question, at least in your mind.
Yeah. And that feeds further into the resentment that I feel towards people about how differently I'm treated. Even just society and people in public who didn't even know me before, how you can go down the street and be treated like shit by a stranger when you're fat, but then all of a sudden some attractive person walks down the street and everyone wants to throw out the red carpet and go out of their way to do something for you. It's noticeable, being that I've had the experience on both sides of the scale.
Yeah. That's really, really upsetting.
I'm sighing because I've gone the other way, right?
Yeah, so, Holly's kind of had the opposite experience.
Have you noticed the difference in treatment towards you from...
I didn't, but, because I was skinny, I didn't realise, like, I'd never, I'd a moderately chunky kid at times, but, like, then I was very, very thin as a teen and a young adult, and then gaining weight. The things that people say and the way that I'm treated is wild. Men will mock me, when I'm out with friends, and, that I'm the fat one in the group, and, people will ask me what happened, what went wrong, and when am I going to lose the weight, and, oh, you used to look so good, and all of that sort of stuff. So I've gone the other way, which is, I think the more common way. But it is a really shit feeling, noticing how differently you're treated and how you're less of a human when you are fat.
It's equally as shit on the other end of the scale.
Yeah, I can see how that's a massive head fuck. And you've been through a huge journey physically. You've gone and you've had these surgeries. I would love to ask. It might sound like a dumb question, but I'd love to ask why you went and had the the gastric sleeve in the first place. But I'm hoping you'll give me that answer in a moment.
Yeah, no, I'm quite happy for that because
Yeah.
I feel like it's important why people choose to do those things.
Yeah, and then you've gone and you've had then further surgery to I'm assuming have a more desirable appearance. I've got little air quotes here, and the net result of that has been, I'm sure, some positivity, but it sounds like a lot of surprising negativity.
So as someone who has just always been fat, it is so validating to hear both of your perspectives. And I understand, of course, there's a lot in that, and that there's different shapes and there's different sizes involved with being a fat person. But anyone listening in my sort of position will feel the same way, that it's so validating to hear you just say, no, you get treated differently.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So to answer your question, Holly, so when I was married, my husband and I wanted to get healthier, and in turn, lose weight. And so we did boot camps, we changed our diets, we spent probably 2 years trying to focus on losing weight, and neither of us really could shift more than 5 to 15 kilos and keep it off. So my entire adult life, I have suffered through diets and exercise and gym memberships and all of these things to try and lose the weight in what society would call the most acceptable way. Because a lot of people have this thing that weight loss surgery is the easy way out. And let me just fucking tell you now, nothing about this journey has been easy. The easiest part was paying and getting the actual stuff cut off me. That was it. Everything from that point onwards has been absolute hell. But yeah, so my decision was because in my head, I thought that the reason I was unhappy was because I was fat. And I understand that that is my own internalized fat phobia, and there is not a single part of me that thinks that there's a problem for other people. Like, I don't look at people and go, oh, you'd be so much better if you were skinny. Like, I do not feel like that about others. This is just a reflection of my own view of myself and mental health. And so, yeah, I thought that if I lost weight, all of my problems would go away. I wouldn't feel shit about myself anymore, and that I would be this thin, beautiful person. And that's not true at all. And so my decision came after my marriage broke up, and it was probably 6 to 8 months after we'd separated. We'd just sold our house, and I had the little bit of settlement money left over, and I thought, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to do this for myself. I've wanted it for so long. I'm just going to take the plunge and do it. So, but I decided in December, and by February I was in another country doing it. Wow. So it might seem like the decision was made on a whim, but it had been years of leading up to it, that point. So by the time I actually planned it and organized it, it was a very short timeline, but the decision that I made was not something that was just a spur of the moment thing. It had been something that I'd been thinking of for years. So yeah, it came from my decision to lose weight through surgery, came from my own insecurities.
And okay, maybe this is a silly question. Would you do it again though? Like, is the net profit worth it?
From a business side of things, yes, it's definitely been profitable. From my own mental health side of things, no, I wouldn't do it.
Wow, okay.
I am more self-conscious, and I am the most critical of my body right now at the smallest than I have ever been when I was fat. Because when I was fat, like, that was my thing. I knew I was fat. Like, everyone knew I was fat. That was fine. Like, I just embraced that. Now, as a smaller body, so I'm now sitting around, I think, about 75 kilos, because I've fluctuated a little bit here and there. So I am so much more critical, and I am more likely to edit and nitpick my body. Whereas before I was like, oh, everyone knows I'm fat. I don't need to change that. Yeah. I'm thin now, so I need to fix this part, this part, this part, this part. I don't like that. Body dysmorphia is rife with me, and I still don't see what I look like in the mirror. That's not the person that I see when I look at myself.
Do you think that's worse since the surgery? Do you think your body just morphed?
100%.
Yeah, wow, okay. So I think you just said that, but I'm just...
Yeah,
Okay,
it is.
wow.
It is my most, like right now, is my most self-conscious that I've ever been about my physical appearance.
Gosh.
So anyone that has asked me, oh yeah, what, like, would you give any advice? And I was like, yeah, focus on your mental health from the very start, because that is the hardest part of the entire journey, which is why it's so hurtful when people say it's the easy way out, because they've got absolutely no idea how much of an actual struggle that it really is. The physical side of things might be easy, yeah, but
although from what I've heard,
the
physical stuff is also not that easy.
It's not easy. Yeah.
No, it's not, but it's definitely the easier.
You're right. Fuck, I mean, that says a lot, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Shit.
And then obviously the same sort of thing. So that was my weight loss. And then in 2022, in February, I flew to Turkey and I had plastic surgery for skin removal, because after I lost the weight, I was so extremely self-conscious about all of my loose skin. And being that I was still working through this entire process, being naked in front of a stranger with skin and like stuff hanging off my body, I felt disgusting in myself, even though men were still paying me for sex and still were finding me attractive. I found myself
it's got
repulsive.
nothing to do with what they think of your body. I think
No.
anybody that's worked in this industry knows that.
No, it's definitely, and so for me, like when a guy was like, oh, can you get on top? I'm like, no, because my empty condom boobs are going to hang over your face.
Empty condom.
At least it's in the theme of the event.
I used to describe them to people as rocks in a sock because that was what it was like. It was just empty skin.
And the thing is, the people that were paying to spend time with you, I assume, absolutely loved them, but it doesn't matter. That's not. It doesn't matter at all.
There wasn't a single person that in that time. There wasn't a single person that came to see me on a one-on-one basis that complained.
No, of course not
at all. And so, like I said, I retained clients through the entire journey. So they saw that physical change from my biggest to before my plastic surgery to even now. And none of them have ever commented on my body physically, because they keep coming back to see me for Lex, the person that I am.
Love that.
And that's normally why I get regulars.
I think that's the case for most of us.
Because my personality is the selling point, not my body.
Which is what people outside of the industry just don't
ticket
understand.
for myself there.
No, but it's true. That is, as you said, like maybe once off, slightly different story, but that's what regulars are about.
And that right there is enough for me to be like, you know what, this makes me realize why I do this. Because at times it can be really shit and I kind of question myself, like, what the fuck am I doing? Because I am a mother, and so people obviously have the whole stigma around working in the sex industry as a parent, and I'm a single parent as well, so that makes it even harder. So not only having the experience of this entire weight loss journey, being a parent while doing that at the same time has been another load on top of the already over-tipped truck.
What has your experience been with the public perception that doing these sorts of procedures is, quote, anti-body positivity? And then where do you stand on that movement, the body positivity / body neutrality movement?
So, I touched on it a little bit, just about how it's commonly seen as the easy way out. And like I said, it's far from it. But I can understand why people would think just paying money to do something is easier than putting in that hard work. But that's coming from people who have never actually experienced that and don't know what, quote, hard work is when it comes to losing weight. Because a lot of that comment and rhetoric comes from people who are already thin and fit and healthy, so to speak. It's coming from people who've never had to worry about their physical health. And so while it is very small-minded of them, it's also not necessarily their fault, because society as a whole is taught to, like, it portrays people that skinny is healthy and fat is not, even though we all know that that's not the truth. So I have had this conversation with a lot of people specifically those in the body positivity movement, because I copped a lot of shit for losing weight, because then that was them seeing me as being fat phobic because I was no longer fat anymore. I couldn't advocate for the body positivity movement, which I find ridiculous, because I'm not trans, so does that mean that I can't advocate for the trans community? Like, I'm not a person of color, does that mean I can't advocate? Like that just makes no sense to me whatsoever, to say that I can't be a peer and an ally for someone like that.
I mean, and in this case, you've had the lived experience of living in a larger body. So
yeah, but that didn't matter, because it didn't fit their idea of what body positivity was, which is toxic in itself. So I think the term body neutrality has come from realizing that toxic positivity was a thing, because not everything about your experience is always positive. And being in bigger bodies, you don't have to be positive all the time, because like, yeah, it feeds into that whole thing. Like, you need to be happy about the way you look, otherwise you're fat phobic, sort of thing. And so I've had conversations with people about having try and make them understand how that is wrong in the first place. Like, my own journey isn't a reflection of how I view them. That, I think, is the biggest thing that they don't understand, is that how I view myself is not how I view other people.
which is the case with all of us. We should be able to understand that, because we all do that.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all allowed to have our experiences without other people taking it as a criticism of themselves.
Yeah.
Like,
if I dye my hair from black to blonde, that doesn't mean that I hate everyone with black hair now.
Yeah.
Like, if I remove the body hair off me, that doesn't mean that I hate everyone that now has body hair. Like, it's those sort of things that when you put it into perspective like that, they kind of go, oh, well, yeah, well, that makes sense. Well, how come it doesn't make sense when I say if I lose weight, that doesn't mean that I hate fat people? Like, it's not, they're not mutually exclusive. Yeah. There has to be that grey area in the middle of realising that everyone has their own mental experience and journey about themselves.
Yeah, not everything is about you guys.
Right. But saying that is probably not the best way to broach the subject.
No, but I do think that people sometimes they're just so caught up, and I'm sure we all do it in various ways, that we're caught up in our own shit, that we take everything out there as personal. And I think, yeah, like you said, it's important to remember how much of everyone is living their own journey, and they're all going through their own shit, and you just don't know. You don't know the experience anyone else is having. Yeah,
it's been a big journey, and it's still ongoing.
Huge.
So you touched on other people bringing this up around you, but when you were in a different body, in a larger body, did you feel pressure to have lower rates as a result of that? And then have you seen any change in the way you think about that, or are those, scars of self-doubt staying there?
So when I first started, I did a lot of research, because I was obviously very nervous about stepping from being online only into full service and in-person work. I looked at a lot of people in Australia that were similar body sizes to me, and I based my initial rates off a standardized, like, okay, this person's this much, this person's this much, so I'm going to sit somewhere in the middle. Being that I definitely wasn't new into the adult industry, I had some experience and knowledge around getting people to pay me. So I kind of was sitting nicely in the mid to lower end of the scale, I reckon, because I knew that BBW was definitely one of the most, if not most, researched or looked at porn style. I definitely knew it was something that I could capitalize on. And so, like I said, I've always been a confident person, so my weight was never something, and I'm like, oh, well, because I'm fat, I need to be a little bit cheaper. I never viewed myself like that. If anything, I felt like that I needed to lower my rates when I lost the weight and hadn't had plastic surgery. I was more likely to take less money when people haggled me, because I was so worried about what they would think when they saw me naked. Because obviously in my photos and all my advertising, I was in lingerie, and so you couldn't really see the extent of my loose skin. And it was probably around the end of 2020, start of 2021, that I also got out of another really abusive relationship emotionally, and my self-confidence was at its all-time lowest. I've actually spoken about this person on another podcast a couple of years ago. I definitely feel like he was, quote unquote, chubby chaser, definitely would be with women for their size. And so as I was losing weight during our relationship, he made me feel less and less attractive. And it got to a point where when I questioned why weren't we intimate anymore, and he was like, I don't feel as attracted to you now you're slim. And in my head, for my entire teenage and adult life, I'd been bullied and ridiculed for being fat. And so this was the first ever time that the scales were flipped and I had ever been made to feel like shit for being thin. And that was a total mindfuck. Like, I couldn't comprehend. I can't even put into words how strange that feeling was. And so that definitely turned me into a shell of my former self. And even my mum had commented and was like, why are you letting this person do this to you? He changed who I was and how I perceived myself, how I interacted with my friends. I lost friendships because of my attachment to this person. I burned a lot of bridges that I haven't even been able to repair now because of how much I was emotionally manipulated and abused in that relationship. And so that was very reflective of how I felt in my working life. I felt like I wasn't worthy of even being paid at that point. Course. And so I didn't change my rates because obviously, like I said, I don't want to feed into the whole idea that before and afters are less or better than. So I didn't change them. But that was in my weakest moment. That would have been when I would have.
Yeah, so even your self-doubt didn't actually, any self-doubt as a human, didn't actually improve. It actually got worse on that journey. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So the only reason that my rates have changed now in the last 2 years have been because of inflation of the price of living.
Well, it's ridiculous.
It has absolutely nothing to do with my physical appearance.
I mean, rates of anything increase over time anyway. That's...
Yeah. But I definitely did have people who questioned me as to why I had upped my rates after my plastic surgery. And so, like, implying that I was now better looking physically, so I had to charge more money. I had people asking why I wasn't charging an extra $200. And I'm like, because I'm the same person. I'm still providing the same service. It's just in a different package.
I do think it's interesting, though, that when you first entered the industry, you looked at other people with similar shapes to you. I mean, I think a lot of us do that. Like that. And I think it makes sense because you kind of go, where's my market, you know? But it's interesting having that alongside all of us also knowing that our bread and butter, our regulars, the clients we rely on, don't really care all that much how we look. And yet we frame ourselves within the industry around people that look the same way as us. And it's, I don't know,
that's where you subconsciously feel at ease. You feel comfort in the similar.
And we all do that, and it has impacts on racism, on transphobia, like that has problems beyond just bodies.
Yeah, even though like you can be the most confident person, but if you are a size 18 and you go and stand in line of women who are all size 10s, you are immediately going to feel worse about yourself, regardless of how confident you are as a person. And it's the same sort of thing. If you, Jenna, a redhead, who might also be in the same line of blondes who are all the same size as you body-wise, you have that difference physically, which then, as society tells you, makes you the outcast.
Absolutely.
So you can all be size 18s and they're blondes and you're redhead and you're going to be the odd one out, and so you're going to feel worse about yourself.
Well, I wouldn't, because I'd know that I'd make more money than them because the boys, they love the gingers.
Red hair,
But I understand your point.
But just society tries to make you fit into where you think you feel the most comfortable.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so that was why I looked at where I fit in that scale,
of course,
in that spectrum, I should say. And yeah, and that was kind of where it started. So that was 2017.
That's when I got back into the industry. So I came back to doing full service then. So we kind of entered into that together.
Oh, yeah, twins.
Do you have any words of advice for listeners who are A, plus sized and or considering any of the procedures that you've done? What's your experience, your expertise that you can share?
So obviously I'm speaking from my journey, and in my personal experience, my mental health has been the worst throughout this. So the first piece of advice that I would give was to seek a professional to be able to guide you through the start, even if it's something that you're considering and haven't even decided on yet. Go and speak to a psychologist and talk through why you feel like that you need this. Because, I mean, obviously, I can't tell you to do it or not to do it. All I can say is that losing weight isn't the solution. You need to fix why you think you need to lose weight, because it's not going to help. And in turn, you then need to also set yourself up for, if you lose weight, how much do you need to get to a point where you're going to be happy with yourself? Because I've had a string of surgeries and I'm still not there. I still look at myself and go, right, I need to fix this. Now that I've got scars, and I'm extremely self-conscious about my physical scars on my body. They're quite obvious, even though it's been over 12 months. I still have it written in all of my bios on my ads, because I want to make sure that if someone is booking me, they know that as soon as I'm naked, they are going to see scarred up body.
Yeah, I noticed that. And I, as somebody in the industry, I think we often read each other's ads differently. And that was, I went, right, she's self-conscious of that. Like that. And not, I don't mean that as a negative, but I meant you're putting that out there to make sure that you're not ending up in a situation where you've got someone surprised and then you're uncomfortable. And
And again, there are probably, I would say, 20% of my clients actually read my ads fully. And I feel like just as a whole, everyone could say it was probably the same statistic. Yeah. So I specifically have it as like one of the first paragraphs on my profile. But those who haven't read it have turned up, and I have then been like, oh, well, just so you know, and it's never been a problem.
Because the problem is not them, it's you, it's us.
No, exactly. And which is why the advice that I would give is to work on your mental health, because your physical body isn't the problem.
So we told our patrons that you were coming on the show, and we described you as having your self-confessed unhealthy obsession with Lord of the Rings. And one of our patrons has asked, how can one have an unhealthy obsession with Lord of the Rings? It is awesome. I can only see healthy obsessions. So explain.
Okay. Well, while you are very correct, it is awesome. I have a divider behind me right now on this video call to hide the room that I'm sitting in right now, that is just wall to wall with Lord of the Rings paraphernalia, books, statues. I have spent probably close to $20,000 over the years on anything to do with Tolkien. I'm covered in tattoos that have portraits from characters from the movie. I mean, it's everything that I think about a lot. Anytime I'm somewhere and I'm like, Lord of the Rings. And I meme things all the time. I actually have a personal Instagram account for my friends and family. And I have my own Lord of the Rings hashtag where I post memes all the time. And it's just my life in Lord of the Rings memes.
That's really endearing. So it's very adorable.
It is, but I personally describe it as unhealthy because, not that I think that it's something that I need to fix. I don't have an unhealthy obsession like I would with
you need to see a psychologist for this.
But it's definitely, it's my own little sort of playful jest at how much that I love Lord of the Rings.
We love it.
It's good you put the divider up because we both hate it. So
Yeah. We're not into Lord of the Rings, so please keep it away.
Have either of you seen it?
I watched the first
yes.
movie and maybe another
Hard.
one.
It was a hard watch. Very difficult.
Sorry. I don't like fantasy.
I know we're going to lose a lot of listeners here because,
So I have I've just recently started seeing someone, and in the second week of us knowing each other, he messaged me and he was like, because he had never seen the movies, or he'd seen one of them when he was younger, and so he messaged me and he was like, Lord of the Rings night, ?
You were like...
I was like, right, that's it, marry me, come on.
So I blame my year 5, my year 5 teacher, because she made us read The Hobbit, and it was absolute fucking torture. And from that day forward, I vowed that I would never read a book that had a map in the front, because if you need a map to navigate the book, I do not have the resources to handle that. So she ruined it. No, they're too far.
I do quite like a bit of fantasy, but Lord of the Rings,
For the viewers, for the listeners, she is currently cradling many books.
7,000 bricks of Lord of the Rings
so
books.
they are all the exact same book, in different covers,
and different font sizes.
Anytime that I see a Lord of the Rings book that is a different cover to one that I own, I will buy it.
I do the same.
I probably have about 30 books of The Hobbit that are all in just different covers, different publishers, different font styles. And the same with Lord of the Rings. So this is all 3 books in one. Mm-hmm. And then I've got like 3 books that are all in separate. So again, this is what I'm saying about unhealthy.
Yeah.
I see it, I buy it.
I do the same with...
I don't own that yet. It's coming home with me.
I do the same with the Game of Thrones series, or Song of Ice and Fire. I collect the different editions of all of those, and Alice in Wonderland is my favourite book, so I also collect all of the different editions of that. And most of my sci-fi and a bit of my fantasy, I really like the 70s and 80s covers. I like that weird style that they used to have of art back then, and so I go to the used bookshops to collect them. So I definitely have many copies of several books on my bookshelf. I can relate.
For someone that doesn't read books at all, I have a lot of books.
So when you said all 3 books in one, I got very confused, and I realized it's because in my mind, Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter are the same thing, and Game of Thrones is like the sequel. Like, that's literally my interpretation.
Oh, Jenna.
I'm sorry.
Lord of the Rings is a trilogy.
Yes, I get that now. I figured that out.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. And Harry Potter.
The Hobbit is not. The Hobbit is not a trilogy, but they turned the movies into one, and that was
so there's 6 total
abhorrent.
movies, so it basically is Harry Potter.
6 movies, but 4 books essentially in the series.
I would much sooner sit down and watch Lord of the Rings again and again and again before I'd watch Harry Potter once. Harry Potter
fucking men.
Yeah.
I'll just watch Drag Race. It's fun.
Yeah. Okay.
Also something I've never seen.
Yeah.
Outrageous.
So that reaction to me saying I've never seen is my, like, in my heart, stab me in the chest to you and Lord of the Rings.
That's fair.
Cute.
Okay, Lex, last segment is shit people say. Do you have one to share with us?
I actually do. So this is obviously, I have to just say, this is one of my favourite segments.
It's the best.
This is like one of the best parts of the entire episodes that I listen to when you guys say all these shits. So I do. When I was losing weight, I had posted on Twitter a couple of years ago about my fluctuation and what category I sat in as a BBW/not. So I wasn't technically big enough to be BBW, but not small enough to still fit in the conventional, like, slim, athletic, curvy, whatever. And so I had a peer in the industry who was still in the BBW category say something to me about, isn't it misleading to your clients that you advertise as a BBW? Like, that is wrong of you to advertise that you are when you're not. And so I was kind of like, well, isn't it really up to me to decide how I label myself and how I market myself? Like I might not be the size 18 that I was, but I'm still a 14, and by all measures that is still considered BBW to most people. And so we kind of had like this little back and forth public argument about how one chooses to describe themselves.
There's no universal
there
fucking
isn't.
measurement for
it's
what
a stupid
is...
porn term.
There isn't.
It doesn't mean
God,
anything
help me.
particular.
Yeah.
It just
There are no size requirements.
Yeah.
And so years later, like, so this was probably 2020. And so now her and I have both sort of laughed at how stupid that argument was. And we're both on good terms now. But at the time when that happened, that really impacted me. And it really made me question how I looked. And was I deceiving my clients? Was I lying and not fitting into this category anymore? So the most hate that I kind of copped losing weight came from those already in the category that I was coming out of.
yeah.
The call is coming from inside the house.
Very much so. So yeah, that was a pretty shitty thing that someone said to me, and enough that it stuck with me and still is something that I think about when I view my body.
That's awful. I'm so sorry.
Even though I now have absolutely nothing bad that I could say about this person, it was enough that in that moment it really triggered something in me.
Well,
that
you were
wasn't great.
undergoing such a massive change, like, you know.
Publicly
Yes,
also.
yeah. And I think that's something, like, that's a whole other level, right? All of us as human beings have our own issues with our body, our own thoughts about our body, our own journeys with our bodies and our health. And when you are in the public eye, quote unquote, and as you've said, we're not famous, but we're very visible to a lot of people, and they make that very clear to us that they can see us.
yes.
That's a whole other.
They feel like we
Yes,
owe them
yeah.
our stories and
And
explanations.
that's a whole other thing, to go through a change in your appearance or any body, anything, any of this stuff. You add on top of that, that people are watching us constantly and commenting on our appearance constantly, and it can't not be a minefield.
Yeah. I have had so many people comment about my personal life, about the things that I choose to share, being that, whether that was my weight loss journey, my relationships, my parenting methods or styles or whatever, there is always someone out there ready to anonymously attack you. And as women, we cop that all the time. And then add in the sex worker on top of that. It's just so much more prevalent that people feel like that they can just say the most unhinged shit to you, and that it's not going to impact you.
Well said. This has been a really good chat, and I think particularly for Jenna and myself, we can relate to a lot of the things that that we talk about with all of our guests, but particularly this one is something that we have very strong personal lived experience with, not the same as your journey, but fluctuations in weight, and it's something that I think we both find a little bit delicate to talk about publicly because it can be quite inflammatory. People get very sensitive. There's a lot of takes on what is positive and what is negative and what you should and shouldn't say and how you should live in your body. And I think especially within a community that tries to be progressive and tries to take care of each other and say the right things, right? So this is a very loaded topic, I guess is my point. And for you to come on here today and be so incredibly vulnerable with us and our listeners and talk about really serious and really heavy things, but also just be so raw has been incredible. For not just for the show, not just for our listeners, but for both of us. It's been really good to hear your experience and the honesty behind that, and we're incredibly grateful for it. So thank you.
Yeah, I found this quite emotional.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I had to hold back tears at some points there. I was literally on the verge and I could feel the shakiness in my voice. So I'm glad I didn't end up bursting into tears.
You did amazing.
But it's something that I feel is important to vocalize and get out there into the world and the community. And I'm proud and honored to be able to be the one that gets that across to you guys.
Thanks so much, Lex. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
To be a
Bye.
part.
Thanks, Lex.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Please look out for us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon. Our name everywhere is Somebody You Pod, as in podcast. Our Patreon starts at just $3 a month, and you can get all of our episodes ad-free and a day early, plus bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes action, bloopers, and more. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the voices of sex workers. And remember, somebody you love might just be a sex worker.